Have you ever wondered how a man of humble beginnings could rise to the highest office in the land, only to spiral into a reign of terror? Today, we delve into the life of Idi Amin, the infamous dictator of Uganda. Idi Amin Dada, a name that still sends shivers down the spine of many Ugandans. Born into obscurity, rising through the military ranks and eventually seizing power in a bloody coup, Amin's life is a study in contrasts. A man once hailed as a hero, his legacy is one marked by brutality, paranoia, and a nation left in ruins. Our journey will take us from the dusty plains of Koboko, where a young Amin first dreamt of a life beyond herding goats, to the halls of the Ugandan military, where he honed his ruthless ambition. We'll traverse the corridors of power he dominated and relive the chilling tales of his reign. We'll explore the audacious Entebbe raid that shook the world and witness the eventual downfall of a man who held an iron grip over his nation. Amin's rule was a paradox. On one hand, he championed African nationalism, expelled the Asian minority, and severed ties with Britain in a bid to create an independent, self-reliant Uganda. Yet his years in power were also marked by gross human rights abuses, economic decline, and a pervasive culture of fear. But who was Idi Amin really? A liberator turned oppressor? A charismatic leader with a dark side? Or merely a product of his time? A man caught up in the whirlwind of post-colonial Africa? These are questions we will seek to answer as we delve deeper into his story. Join us as we unravel the life of a man who was once hailed as a hero only to become one of history's most notorious villains. We'll examine the forces that shaped him, the choices he made, and the indelible mark he left on Uganda and the world. This is the enigma of Idi Amin. Born in a small village in Uganda, Idi Amin's early life was far from remarkable. The year was around 1925 in the backwaters of Koboko, a village nestled in the West Nile province. Idi Amin Dada was born into a family of modest means, his mother a herbalist and his father a farmer. Amin's early life was a series of struggles and hardships. His parents separated when he was still a child, and he was raised by his mother, a strong and resourceful woman who instilled in him the resilience that would later define his life. Despite the challenges, Amin's childhood was full of adventure and exploration, often wandering the vast landscapes of his village, fishing in the Nile and hunting in the wild. Education was a luxury that Amin could not afford. He received little formal schooling. His learning derived mostly from life's school of hard knocks. Yet his lack of education did not deter him. Instead, it fueled his ambition, his desire to rise above his circumstances. In the early 40s, a young and robust Amin caught the attention of the British colonial army. His physical prowess, coupled with his fearless spirit, made him an ideal recruit. He was enlisted as a private in the King's African Rifles, the British colonial regiment, marking the beginning of his military career. But this was just the start of Amin's journey, a journey that was as unpredictable as the man himself. Though he was a man of humble origins, Amin's ambition was anything but modest. His determination and resilience, traits he inherited from his mother, would propel him from the obscurity of a small Ugandan village to the world stage. His life was a testament to the power of ambition, a narrative of a man who rose from the depths of poverty to the pinnacles of power. Little did the world know this young man would grow up to be a figure that would shake the very foundations of Uganda. In the army, Amin found a sense of purpose and belonging. As a young man, he had joined the King's African Rifles, a regiment of the British colonial army in 1946. His physical prowess and determination quickly set him apart, and he was promoted to the rank of corporal within just a few years. His military career was marked by rapid promotions, a testament to his tenacity and unwavering ambition. During his service in the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya, Amin's leadership skills garnered him recognition, and he climbed the ranks to become a sergeant. His performance during the Shifta War saw him further ascend to the rank of Effendi, a first for a black African within the British Army. Amin's military experience extended beyond the battlefield. He was known for his flamboyant personality and charismatic leadership style, which earned him a unique place within the Ugandan military. His reputation as a fearless and ruthless leader only added to his growing influence. In 1964, when Uganda gained independence, Amin was one of the few high-ranking soldiers to transition into the newly formed Ugandan army. He continued to climb the ranks, ultimately becoming a major general and the army's chief of staff. However, Amin's rise was not without controversy. His methods were often brutal and his leadership style autocratic. There were allegations of misconduct, yet his charisma and military successes often overshadowed these darker aspects of his character. Amin's military prowess was undeniable, and his influence within the Ugandan army was considerable. This, coupled with his ambition and charisma, created the perfect storm. His rise within the military ranks was rapid, setting the stage for his ascent to power. In 1971, Amin seized the chance to take control of Uganda. This was a decisive moment in the history of the African nation, a pivotal point that would significantly shape its future. In January of that year, while President Obote was attending a Commonwealth summit in Singapore, Amin orchestrated a military coup. The element of surprise was on his side, and the operation was executed without major resistance. With a swift and well-planned takeover, Amin found himself at the helm of the country. The early days of his rule were met with a glimmer of hope by some Ugandans. Amin was charismatic, a man of the people, they said. He was known for his grandiose and flamboyant public gestures. For instance, he once declared himself the conqueror of the British Empire. His rule was marked by a sense of nationalistic fervor, and he was initially praised for his efforts to expel the Asian minority, a move that was seen by some as reclaiming Uganda for Ugandans. However, not everyone was convinced. Many were skeptical, wary of his unpredictability and his penchant for theatrics. They saw beneath the veneer of charm a ruthlessness that was unsettling, but their voices were drowned out in the wave of optimism that swept the nation. Amin's regime was marked by economic mismanagement, gross human rights abuses, and political repression. But these dark aspects of his rule were not immediately apparent. In the beginning, the people of Uganda saw a leader who was assertive, confident, and seemingly dedicated to the cause of national sovereignty. His leadership, however, was not built on a strong foundation. It was a house of cards, waiting to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. His military background had prepared him for the battlefield, but not for the intricate nuances of running a country. However, the hope that marked the start of Amin's rule would soon turn into fear. As the days turned into months and then years, it became evident that Amin's reign was not the dawn of a new era, but the beginning of a long and terrifying night. Amin's rule quickly evolved into a reign of terror. A once hopeful nation was now under the iron fist of a dictator, as the charismatic leader turned into a ruthless autocrat. Human rights abuses became the order of the day. Allegations of extrajudicial killings, torture, and persecution of specific ethnic and political groups were rampant. It's estimated that under Amin's rule, between 100,000 to 500,000 people lost their lives, many of them in brutal, unthinkable ways. Political repression was another tool in Amin's arsenal. He ruled by fear, silencing any opposition with an iron fist. Dissidents disappeared in the dead of the night, their families left in a chilling silence, their fate unknown. The media was heavily censored, and speaking out against the regime was akin to signing one's death warrant. The economy too was not spared from the dictator's destructive reign. Businesses were seized, especially those owned by the Asian community, which Amin expelled from Uganda in 1972. The economy plummeted, plunging the country into years of hardship and poverty. Among the most infamous incidents during Amin's rule was the Entebbe raid. In 1976, an Air France plane was hijacked by two members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and two members of the German revolutionary cells. The plane, carrying 248 passengers, was diverted to Entebbe, Uganda. Amin, in an audacious move, publicly supported the hijackers, further isolating Uganda on the global stage. The incident ended with a daring rescue operation by Israeli commandos, further damaging Amin's standing. The once hopeful nation was now in the grips of a ruthless dictator. The promise of a better future was replaced with fear, repression, and economic decline. This was the reign of terror under Idi Amin, a period that would leave a lasting scar on Uganda's history. The end of Amin's rule was as dramatic as his rise to power. As the 1970s wore on, the world was growing increasingly intolerant of Amin's erratic and brutal regime. The tipping point, however, was not the international community's revulsion, but a war of his own making. In October 1978, Amin made a fateful decision. He invaded Tanzania, a neighbor he had long been at odds with. It was a decision that would seal his fate. The Tanzanian army, under the leadership of President Julius Nyerere, was determined not to let this act of aggression go unpunished. The Tanzanians, with the support of Ugandan exiles, began a counteroffensive. The Ugandan army, once so mighty under Amin's rule, crumbled. By April 1979, Tanzanian forces and Ugandan exiles had reached the capital city of Kampala. Amin's reign was on its last legs. Amin, ever the survivor, fled the country, first to Libya and then to Saudi Arabia, where he would live out his days in comfortable exile. The fall of Amin was greeted with relief, both in Uganda and around the world. His reign of terror, marked by human rights abuses, economic mismanagement, and a complete disregard for the rule of law, had come to an end. But the people of Uganda, who had suffered so much under his rule, were left to pick up the pieces. Uganda was left in a state of devastation. The economy was in shambles, the infrastructure was destroyed, and the nation was deeply divided. It would take years, even decades, for Uganda to recover from the damage inflicted by Amin's rule. Amin's reign of terror was finally over, but the scars of his rule would remain. Amin spent the last years of his life far from the land he once ruled with an iron fist. In 1979, following his downfall, Idi Amin fled Uganda first to Libya, where he was offered asylum by his longtime ally Muammar Gaddafi. It was there in the North African country that he lived a relatively comfortable life for several years. However, the former Ugandan dictator eventually left Libya, seeking a quieter existence in a place that was less politically charged. His journey led him to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a nation known for its strict adherence to law and order and its conservative lifestyle. The Saudi government granted him sanctuary on the condition that he abstain from any political activities. In this nation of sand and sun, Amin lived out the remainder of his days in a modest villa in Jeddah, a far cry from the grandeur and power he once enjoyed in Uganda. Amin's life in exile was characterized by obscurity and solitude. He was rarely seen in public and had little contact with the outside world. He was said to have spent his days praying and reading the Quran, a stark contrast to the violence and brutality that marked his rule. In the summer of 2003, Amin's health began to deteriorate rapidly. He slipped into a coma in July and died a few weeks later on August 16th, at the age of approximately 80. His death marked the end of a life that had been marked by controversy and cruelty. Yet even in death, Amin remained a figure of fear and intrigue. His grave in Jeddah is unmarked, a fitting end for a man whose life was shrouded in mystery and whose rule was marked by terror. In death, Amin left behind a legacy of fear and brutality, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. Idi Amin remains a controversial figure in Uganda's history. His rule, marked by gross human rights abuses, political repression and corruption, has left a lasting imprint on the nation and the world. His despotic reign forced the world to confront the reality of unchecked power and the devastating consequences it can have on a nation's people and its stability. The repercussions of Amin's rule are still felt today. Uganda, still recovering, continues to grapple with the challenge of healing and rebuilding, and a testament to the profound impact of his rule. Internationally, his reign has served as a stark lesson in the dangers of autocratic leadership. His story has influenced international policies, prompting a greater focus on human rights and democratic governance. Idi Amin's story serves as a chilling reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink and the resilience it takes to rise again. His legacy is one that will forever echo in the annals of history, a constant reminder of the delicate balance of power.